And once again, I'd like to welcome you to our Children and Anxiety guest speaker for the summer. I had the privilege of producing this presentation with Kara a couple of months ago, and I was so struck by the amount of information that she was able to provide, some really amazing tips and strategies for working with children and anxiety. And I really felt it was very valuable to our military families because of the frequent moves that we have and deployments. And so I'm hoping that you find through this presentation, not just for helping your children, but for helping yourself understand children and the anxiety that they're facing. And as we all know, anxiety in children is on the rise for whatever social reasons it is. And so I really believe that this is a very applicable and timely message. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kara. She has been having a little bit of trouble with her microphone, so if we have to do a little bit of troubleshooting, please bear with us while we do that. All right, Kara, over to you.
Great, thanks, Joanna. I think it's a little apt, isn't it, that we're having a little technology just to add a little anxiety to my anxiety presentation. I think that makes sense.
That's right, and you sound good right now, so that's good.
Excellent, thanks. I'm really pleased to be here this afternoon, so thanks, Joanna, for inviting me. I do work at the Halifax and Region Military Family Resource Center, where I'm the Director of Evaluation and Learning. I've been supporting military families at the Resource Center for over 17 years now. I'm really passionate about supporting families and providing information and resources related to deployment, mental health, and parenting, and anxiety is definitely one of those areas that I'm super interested in and really excited to share information with you. So I'm going to share information based on some of the best practices and up-to-date research in the area of anxiety. After the workshop, we will send you an email with the PowerPoint presentation, handouts and links to any resources that I reference, and some tools and strategies that you might want to try, so you don't have to worry about writing things down and can focus on today's presentation. So before we do parent workshops at the Resource Center, we like to remind people of some of the beliefs that we have. And the first one is that there's no such thing as the perfect parent or caregiver, so that's not the expectation we have. There are no quick fixes, easy answers, or recipes for parenting, if only. Parents are the true experts on their children, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach to raising children. The information and tools we offer are designed to support parents in developing their own ways of promoting our children's growth and development. We invite you to question and explore the information that I'm going to provide and choose the tools that make sense for you. The workshop is meant to be psychoeducational, focusing on prevention and personal growth, not counseling or treatment. If that's something you want to explore, we'll give you some information later on how you can access this type of support. So before we dive into anxiety, I thought we'd take a few moments to recognize some of our parenting efforts that we make every day. So social media is filled with humorous and sometimes not so humorous epic parent fails. We often don't have to search far for one of our own parenting insecurities or flaws. In fact, as humans, we seem to have a negativity bias, which means that negative events and circumstances weigh more heavily on us, psychologically speaking, than do positive ones. So it's important to take the extra effort to focus on what we're doing that is positive, as well as try to find humor in our experiences. So as parents, we do many things every day to support our children and help them grow. So let's take a minute to give ourselves some credit for those as we start on this journey. So if you can take a look at the screen, you can select one of the wins on the board, or you can pick another one that I don't have on there and share your own. And if you're comfortable, raise your hand or use the chat box if you're willing to share more of your parenting win for the week, and let us know how many children you have. So if you'd like to in the chat box or raise your hand, or I've got to check. Natalie, would you like to share your parenting win for the week?
Just remember to unmute yourself, Natalie, so we can hear you. There you go.
Probably works better. To talk my daughter through, we've actually gone for therapy for anxiety.
Yes.
Some tools that we already use, and we pulled out one of those tools when she was stressed about going to camp, and so we did some breathing exercises, and we sat and talked about it, and so she went to camp this week, no problem, and is loving it. So
awesome. That's great. You were able to pull from your toolbox.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. In the chat, we have some who told their children that they love them. Excellent.
And we
Anybody
have
else?
Michelle Schwarick says she has 2 kids and she has no wins yet this week.
I challenge that, Michelle. I challenge that. I am positive. You got through this part of the week is indeed a big parenting win.
And then we have Natalie, 1 8-year-old for her. And Tammy, you want to share how many kids you have? You can think about what we've got Stephanie taxied their kids somewhere. That's a big one, right? It takes up a lot of time.
Takes up a lot of time.
Tammy has 6 children. I know that people fed their family pets this week. So for those of you who have family pets, I'm just going to give that a big check. Yeah. Awesome. All right.
If you're surviving as a family through the heat, that too is a parenting win.
And Allison just shared, these are great, reminding us that the small things are okay too. And she's done a few of these this week, so that's good. Excellent. Yeah, as your cat sits on your keyboard. Yeah, you might hear mine come up and meow on the microphone. So Kelly, 1.5, that's right. She's got 1 on the way and brought to summer day camp while hubby was away. That's a good one. The day camp.
Thanks for playing the hashtag parenting win, everyone. I really appreciate that. Oh, and I see someone was up every night with both of them. Yeah, see, these are huge parenting wins, huge parenting wins. So in parenting, it's all the things that we do that make a difference, and it's important to recognize the amount of effort and caring we put into our children. So thanks, guys. So what's the roadmap going to look like for this next hour? So we're going to look at what is anxiety, how children might experience anxiety, how you might recognize it. We're going to look at what happens in the brain when children experience anxiety and why it can be helpful for children to understand more about what is happening when they experience it. We'll take a look at our role as parents and what parents can do to help. And today's hour-long session is meant to be an introduction and will provide you with ideas on where you can find more information and support after the session. There are so many great resources, and it's so hard to do these in an hour because there's so much that I want to squeeze in. So this is just a smattering of what that looks like. So we'll wrap up by taking any questions and comments at the end. So if you're feeling like this is the right place for you, give me a green check. Great. So today's session is going to focus particularly on those children that are 5 to 12 years of age. But as Joanna said at the beginning, this applies to all of us, no matter what our age is. On the screen, you will see the great quote by Vanessa LaPointe. She says, "Children are not immature adults. They are children. They have all sorts of stretching and growing to do. There will be stops and starts. There will be mountains and valleys. And as parents, we want to make sure our children are able to grow up into smart, caring, independent adults. But this most definitely takes time and does not happen overnight. Children are not capable of self-control, impulse management, and self-regulation all at once. It is not that they are trying to mess with our heads. They literally cannot control themselves at times, especially when emotions are running high. We know this from the world of neuroscience. You need a developed frontal and prefrontal cortex and a regulated emotional core in the brain in order to self-regulate, and kids don't have this yet, no matter how smart they look. I just entered a conversation with my niece a couple of weeks ago with her very precocious 18-month-old who was very verbal and can speak, and talked about a little bit about how it seems like she's doing things and she knows what she's doing to manipulate her parents, but in fact, it's not possible. So as they experience life, we as adults can help support their growth so they can eventually become someone who is emotionally settled and has the capacity for self-regulation. They aren't going to get it right away. It's going to take time, many years, and that's expected and okay. So what exactly is anxiety? So let's take a few minutes to think about it and then share your thoughts in the chat box. So you did sign up for this. It had the word anxiety in it. When you see that, what do you think? In the chat box, when I say anxiety, you think what? What thoughts do you have around anxiety? Stress? Yes. Stress and anxiety go hand in hand. Worry, anxious, nervous.
I think of fear.
Yes, that's another one. Absolutely. Keep kind of posting nervous, so there's definitely some common ones that we use. The unknown, absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit about the unknown as well. Really good. So we're going to keep building on these with the Anxiety BC's definition of anxiety. Anxiety BC is one of the great resources we're going to be sharing at the end of this session. So the first thing to know is that anxiety is normal. Everyone experiences anxiety from time to time. It alerts us to threats, protects us from danger, and helps us to reach important goals. For example, it's normal to feel anxious when trying something new, encountering a bear on a hike, very normal to have some anxiety, or before taking an exam. Anxiety is not dangerous. Although anxiety feels uncomfortable, it is temporary and will eventually decrease. The sensations we experience in an anxious situation are designed to alert and activate us. They are normal and part of our body's natural response mechanism. Our body is smart enough to know when to amp up and when to calm down. Anxiety is adaptive. Anxiety helps us prepare for real danger, such as crossing a busy street. It can also help us perform at our best and motivate us to study for an exam or practice for a big game. When we experience anxiety, it triggers our fight, flight, freeze response and prepares our body to react. For instance, our heart beats faster to pump blood to our muscles, so we have the energy to run away or fight off danger. Without it, we would not survive. We definitely need some anxiety. Anxiety is part of life, so trying to eliminate anxiety from your child's life is pretty much impossible. And even if it were possible, probably not a life that would be really worth a whole lot if you're not going to be able to experience things that are new and things that make us anxious. Since anxiety is everywhere, one of the greatest gifts you can give your anxious child or teen is the confidence and skill to tolerate anxiety whenever it occurs and to continue with life anyway. Anxiety can become a problem. Small doses of anxiety in certain situations are useful. However, when your child is worrying much of the time, avoiding fun activities, or refusing to go to school because they're scared, anxiety has become a problem. Think of anxiety like a fog, like the picture down there, and if you're from the Maritimes or the coast, you know what that looks like. If it covers everything, makes it hard to see, stops you from doing what you usually do, and generally gets in the way, then it has likely become a problem. Is there anything about this definition that stands out for you? Raise your hand if you'd like to share, or you can put your thoughts in the chat box. Does that sound like some of what you think about anxiety?
I think, Kara, just, being reminded that it's normal. I think sometimes when we see our kids or our, significant others or whomever is important to us experiencing anxiety, it's so easy to say, that's too much or that's not normal, but it is normal. We all experience it to some degree.
Absolutely. And a lot of what the research is telling us as well is how we view anxiety and stress also influences our ability to deal with it. And so that when we actually normalize that anxiety and stress, and that we actually, our ability to deal with that is much better than trying to fight it. So that's another interesting thing that the research has started to tell us. So how do we recognize anxiety in children? So on the whiteboard, you can see a variety of clues from Kids Have Stress Too that a child may be experiencing stress and some anxiety. It's important to note that some of the signs might not be noticeable as well. So these might be ones you see, but there's also things that might be happening that you haven't even picked up on. Raise your hand if you're willing to share how you first recognize that you are witnessing with a sign of stress, or if you'd like to put it in the chat box. Oh, and someone put scratching. Definitely sometimes there's different scratching and picking can sometimes be something that people will demonstrate. Absolutely. Nail biting.
Yeah, stomach ache, nail biting.
Stomach ache without a doubt, headaches are a common one that children will use because it's really difficult to actually describe what's going on in your mind with emotions and feelings, but stomach ache and headache are two of the common ones. Absolutely. And as you can see, there's a variety of different ways that it can be expressed in the mind and behavior, feelings, body, nightmares, I see those as well. So there are a variety of signs, and it usually takes some time to watch your children and help them identify what the signs look like in themselves. They do not have the same life experience as us and may not be tuned into what happens when they are stressed and anxious. Negative self-talk, absolutely, Sherry, you got that there. So another way of looking at this, a visual that I've found, is by Stuart Shanker. So I've just started to become more familiar with his work of self-reg. And I'd recommend his book and website if you're interested in taking a look at more of this type of information on self-regulation. And he looks at the world from an extremely powerful place in terms of stress. So this visual depicts a few of his concepts and challenges us to be stress detectives, which I really love this term, stress detectives, to better identify what stresses our children. So often we see this behavior, so what's behind it? And so he's divided it up into different domains. He talks a lot about the biological and understanding some of the stressors and what that can do for children. So some of our kids are more sensitive to light, or maybe it's noise, or to what's going on, or temperature even. We talked about that several times already today in this session, but just the energy it takes for our body to deal with the additional heat that we're experiencing. We've all as adults expressed how that can be kind of unsettling, and so that affects going forward, you know, any of us, and how we deal with life and how we take on challenges and new things. So the biological is one of those elements. The emotional, how we deal with feelings and transitions. Social, so for those that are children that are neurodiverse, interpreting social cues can be really stressful, and anxiety, those ones are very real. Hangry is real, Allison, you are absolutely right, hangry is real. That biological one is key, and I'm going to repeat that later on a little bit about some of the basic needs. It's huge. Group dynamics, and you know, someone mentioned summer camp earlier, so what that is and all of the different elements. Some of the pro-social elements and the cognitive, and so we're going to talk a little bit about school at the end, but certainly math can still rise a few of our blood pressure, I'm sure, even though we're done school. So there's different elements that can create that stress. He has a 5-step method to learning how to be a stress detective, and he says self-reg is about hitting the pause button and asking, why am I seeing this behavior, and why am I seeing it now? So definitely I've only had a snippet of Stuart Shanker, spent a couple of days in training with him, but he's definitely someone, if you're interested in self-regulation and really looking at stress from another lens, that you might be interested in it. So why am I seeing this behavior, and why am I seeing it now? So give me a green check if this visual is helpful in thinking about your child's behavior. Excellent. Yeah. And in the after session email, you'll get the link and you can check out. There's lots of great resources that are available to parents. So not only do we want to become stress detectives, we want to teach children to become experts on how stress and anxiety works so that they can make changes in how they deal with worry. One way that we can support them is learning more about anxiety and what is happening in their bodies and brains. So anxiety is normal, often plays a useful role. Children need to hear that being afraid is okay, and it's even right. We humans are supposed to worry. It helps us to stop and think about our actions, to back away from dangers, or fight for our lives if necessary. But many situations we face are not life-threatening, and we want to learn more about managing those feelings. I really enjoyed this quote by Karen Young. Anxiety is not a sign of breakage. It's a sign that a strong, healthy, magnificent brain is doing exactly what brains are meant to do, which is protect us from threat. So children often believe that the physical symptoms are the problem. It's important to remember that physical sensations, even when caused by anxiety, are physical. Symptoms are the end result of a predictable pattern, and if we change the pattern, we can influence the symptoms. Children and parents benefit greatly from understanding what the physical symptoms are, and knowing how the alarm system fires off takes away the mystery. It helps us to tell children that everyone has a worry center in the brain, and helps us to understand how to respond when our children need help. Give me a screen check if you've heard of the fight or flight response. Now, how in the heck are we going to explain that one to children? Thankfully, there are some great ideas, and some people have spent some great amount of time thinking about this for us and how to do it. Stuart Shanker, I mentioned, has a way to introduce this to children. He uses colors to describe blue brain, red brain. Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne-Bryson of the Yes Brain, they have a couple of other parenting books. They have a way of describing the brain, the upstairs brain, the downstairs brain. So there's a variety of people that have spent some time thinking about this. And I'm going to introduce you to another one, another potential visual that can help you explain the brain to children. If any of you have any neuroscience backgrounds or physiology, psychology, I apologize, because yes, this is going to be very much a very generalized depiction of the brain. It's much, much more complicated, I appreciate. But what a lot of the researchers are telling us is that helping children to understand even some of these in this rudimentary way can be really helpful for them to understand how their brain works and how to deal with it. So we're going to go forward understanding that we are simplifying a very complicated piece of us. So Chris Bergstrom from Blissful Kids created characters to help children understand the brain and what is happening to them. So the prefrontal cortex, or TEX for short, so that's that sheriff you can see in the picture, is the newer part of the brain, still very old, that helps us deal with emotions and make wise decisions. She figures out stuff for you and helps you make choices. She's there to stop you from doing crazy things for your own good. TEX is like the smart sheriff in your brain. TEX helps us to deal with thoughts, emotions, and our actions in relation to our goals. She helps us plan and make good decisions, and she helps us with impulse control too to overcome temptation. When we experience a thought or an emotion, TEX asks, will this help us reach our goals? If the answer is no, then TEX will stop you from acting, from doing that crazy stuff. If the answer is yes, as in this will help you, then TEX will allow you to act. This is how the prefrontal cortex, or TEX, does her work, sort of like the sheriff in your brain. Now, Amy there at the top, the amygdala, is like a jumpy superhero who tries to protect you at all costs, but often makes mistakes stress for real threats, and effectively stops TEX from doing her job. Now, why do we have something like this going on in our fancy brains? What is this? This is called the fight or flight response. During a stress response, we disconnect from rational thinking. We shift gears to an impulsive, reactive fight, flight, freeze mode. We lose connection to higher brain functions like self-regulation, empathy, communication skills, and memory. We have a hard time focusing, remembering instructions like conflict resolution skills, controlling impulses, and making good choice. This is how evolution has wired our brains. Our brains have evolved to react to danger and overwhelm this way. Why? A long time ago, when wild animals hunted us, our brains helped us survive by reacting automatically and instantly to danger. This ancient part of our brain, the amygdala, still sounds the alarm whenever it believes we are in imminent danger, and when the alarm goes off, our bodies prepare to fight, bolt, or freeze. The alarm goes off when we face overwhelming or strong emotions like fear, anger, sadness. The amygdala does not see a difference between perceived threat and actual danger. It triggers false alarms, just like that smoke alarm we've all had in our apartment or our house, which goes off when the toast is burning and there's no fire. Another way is you can use animal analogies with children to help them understand by taking a look at a cat when the cat feels threatened. What is the body doing? Does the cat take off? Does it freeze and take a look to see what's happening? So you can use those analogies as well. It's really hard to make good choices or speak eloquently when your body forces you to fight, bolt, or freeze. According to studies, we can practice mindfulness to activate both TEX and the hippo. Sustained practice can even help them grow bigger. This way, TEX and hippo can help you control your attention, manage and respond to emotions and thoughts, and control impulses, so that you can better deal with difficult emotions and thoughts and ultimately make better decisions. For parents, it's important to remember that stress response hinders access to memory, recall, and storage. It's really hard to think clearly, use logic, or even remember to complete basic tasks when the alarm system has sounded. Unchecked worried thoughts and how we imagine events going wrong both set off the alarm system. Also, if you're afraid of the thoughts and sensation of the alarm system itself, you set off the alarm system again, intensifying the response. So if you're anxious about your anxious feelings, that makes you even more anxious and unable to access TEX. So the goal is to recognize when our jumpy superhero Amy is taking over and allow the TEX, the kind of smart one, the prefrontal cortex, to help us better understand which events are really threatening versus events you can manage. It takes practice and repetition for the brain, but it can learn. Mindfulness and other calming techniques can help activate the smart one. So can you see yourself using a visual like this to explain anxiety in the brain to your child? Give me a green check for yes or a red X for no. Okay, some green checks. Excellent. And I have used this with my 10-year-old as well, and it was really helpful to be able to refer to Amy, and we like to call her the jumpy superhero. So when Amy is engaged in what's happening. So you can take a look at those. Excellent. So how do we know when anxiety and that jumpy superhero has taken over and when supports are required? So we'll take a look at this a little further. Worry becomes problematic just like any other pattern can when used in excess, in the wrong places, and at the wrong time. Some children may even have anxiety about having anxiety. Growing up is full of new challenges and experiences, and learning how to manage uncertainty and discomfort. A useful question to ask is, how much does the anxiety interfere with the child's ability to engage in age-appropriate activities? How often are they complaining of an upset stomach or other physical woes? How often are they avoiding activities or seeking reassurance constantly? Do they regularly practice catastrophic thinking, with their thoughts traveling quickly to the worst-case scenario? Are they perfectly rigid, clinging to perfectionist goals, living by the credo that life may be unpredictable for some people, but staying on guard and paying attention gives them an edge over more careless folks? How is your child managing each day? Is there crying before school? Often difficulty returning to school after breaks or holidays? Trouble going to sleep or staying asleep? Challenges in schools? Keeping isolated from friends? Refusal to go on school trips? Resisting participating in new activities or trying new things? It is the persistence and effect on normal activities you want to be tuned into. At different times, our children might show some of these, but again, it's how often and how long you see some of these things. Have you ever asked yourself why some children are more anxious than others? Give me a green check if this is something you've wondered about. You wondered why some children, or maybe even why my child and others are not. What the current research tells us is that there's no anxiety gene, but temperament makes a difference. A genetic predisposition to be sensitive, emotional, fearful, or high-strung. Children who worry more tend to be more sensitive, have active imaginations, high standards, and cling to perfectionism. But this does not mean it's destiny, and being a worrier can be temporary and is definitely changeable. There is a good chance at least one parent is anxious. Heredity plays a part, but anxiety is also learned and may be a long family tradition. Regardless, when parents understand their role in perpetuating an anxious response to life, you can embrace new strategies to alter the patterns. Life events in the family, other people's actions, and the world we live in can also influence anxiety. I think it's worth each of us considering just how much we are influenced by the constant bombardment of fear in our everyday life, despite the fact that the world is not more dangerous. And so one of the conferences that I attended online around anxiety, there was an organization called Let Grow, and they really had started to challenge the way that the media and society continues to give us messages. So they cite things like in the United States, we have a 50-time, in the United States, there's a 50-year, it's never been so safe in 50 years is what I'm trying to say. So crime rates are at their lowest, but yet if you were to watch the news, that's not the feeling that you're given. So we have this feeling that there's a predator behind every pine tree, that we have to be taking care of our children at this heightened sense. Right from the day that they're born, all of the monitors that we have in place, everything kind of gets us really worked up to be really fearful. And so we keep our kids closer than ever before, meaning they rarely have the kind of free, unstructured, unsupervised time that serves as a pressure valve. So one of the challenges they put out is to have your kids do one thing on their own that you did at their age and that you haven't allowed them to do now. And I think it's a great lens to think about that. So my husband and I have had conversations about that, like what were we doing when we were 10 years old? And we definitely found we had more freedoms and we didn't even realize than what our son has. So it's what you're comfortable with, so I don't want to stress anybody out overly, but to think about what that looks like. So maybe let them ride their bikes to a friend's house, or play outside in the neighborhood, or get themselves to school if they're at that age. So let me know in the chat box if you find this easy, or if you found it difficult at times to give your child more freedom. So some of you are up for the challenge, that's great. Have you thought about it in this way? Are there things that you're not letting your child do, but yet you got to do them when you were their age? In the United States, there are even laws, I understand. In some states, I think it might have been Utah just passed a law so that parents can actually let their children do things that they don't get in trouble for. They're age appropriate, but it was fascinating to me. So, yeah, so Kelly, I find it hard. Yes, maturity level. Hard to do. We definitely have this wired in terms of safety and keeping them safe and what that is. So it's just something to think about in a different way, how much the language we have about staying safe and keeping them safe can add sometimes to the anxiety of what's going on. So what practitioners who work with children with anxiety like Reed Wilson and Lynn Lyons tell us is that it's not about blaming yourself or blaming your spouse or your partner or your family. It's about developing a better understanding of strategies to manage anxiety. We want to teach children to become experts on how anxiety works so that they can make changes in how they deal with anxiety. So our goal as parents is not to prevent worries or to be stress-free. It is to keep anxious fears from dominating our families and to stress better. Worry can be exhausting for everybody. So take a moment to think about one thing you've done when your child has been anxious that you feel has worked. And what is one thing that you feel you've done that has not worked? So you can raise your hand or in the chat box, what is something that you do that's worked? What is something you feel that hasn't worked? And have a little brainstorm. We'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like.
Yeah, so feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself and share if you've got a tip that you've used or things that you've used that haven't worked. And go ahead and speak out loud if you feel comfortable doing so. I think I'll start. I think for us with our son, remaining calm ourselves in the midst of anxious situations is essential. And so that has worked for us. And then what hasn't worked for us is when we get upset or excitable or whatever, not remaining calm, then raises, his anxiety level. So,
yeah.
And then we have Tammy who said what has worked is letting the kids talk and listening. And, I like that, Natalie. So Natalie has an anxiety toolbox. And Allison is saying too much talking or too many words doesn't work.
And it really is trial and error as well, as figuring out what some of these things that will work for our families and our children. Absolutely.
Yeah. See, remembering you are an adult, not acting like a child.
That's the kicker, Stephanie. It really is. This parenting thing, that's what I've learned, and I continue to learn. It's more about how I show up sometimes. Really, it's mostly about 90% about how I show up, and the rest is about how my child does. It's really, really true. That's great. Thanks for sharing. So we're going to take a look at a few of the parenting patterns that we probably have all tried and challenge yourself to look about how they can sometimes work in the short run, but taking a look at how it might look in the long run. So again, some of this work comes from Lynn Lyons and Reed Wilson and others who speak about some of the parenting patterns that can, again, in the long run, don't serve us as well. So the first of this is constant reassuring, rescuing, and overprotecting. So it is definitely our role to help to reassure our children, but it's how much we're doing that and how much our children rely on that. So helping children avoid the things they are afraid of will make them feel better in the short term, but it reinforces the anxiety in the long term. So when you step in to save your child and when you provide constant reassurance that they're okay and capable, you prevent them from learning how to solve some of their own problems and take away their independence. When you're doing all the talking, they don't learn to talk for themselves in a way that promotes the ability to experiment and master new tasks. So when we find ourselves getting ready to provide the reassurance, we can instead try helping them to find the reassurance they want by saying, that really sounds like you're worry talking. What can you say back? How might you answer that if they're asking us? Worried kids fail to recall what they've accomplished before in the past. The second thing parents find themselves doing is providing certainty. Many parents give a worried child detailed descriptions about an upcoming event. Anxiety hates uncertainty. Giving information at length supports rigidity and teaches children that they cannot move forward unless they know everything in advance. And the funny thing about anxiety is that it shifts. So when we concentrate all of our time on one thing and giving them all the information to try to make their anxiety go away, sometimes anxiety just finds another place to go. So you can't always promise a child that their fears are unrealistic, that she won't fail a test or that another child won't laugh at them, but you can express confidence that she's going to be okay, she will be able to manage it, and that as she faces her fears, the anxiety levels will drop over time. The third one is identifying your child as a worrier because it runs in the family. We want to be careful not to accept the anxious family patterns as destiny or purely genetic. Anxiety can be part of a family's experience, but it is not their identity. Anxiety is one of the most treatable elements in all of mental health. So a child has anxiety versus an anxious child. You can think about some of the ways that we kind of use that language. The fourth parenting pattern is requiring family members, friends, and schools to accommodate the anxiety, allowing bad behaviors, yelling, swearing, tantrums, hitting, because it's part of the anxiety, or permitting and encouraging avoidance. We're going to use some of these some of the time. Again, it's how often we use them and to what end. Other parenting patterns that are not helpful are modeling with your own anxious behaviors. Parents may also find themselves pushing too hard, sometimes becoming angry and explosive and punishing. Another way of thinking about this is that if you don't know how to swim, so if your child didn't know how to swim, someone yelling swim at you won't help you master the freestyle. So the last parenting pattern often used is ignoring anxiety and pretending your child is fine. It's quite the list. We've probably all tried these out, and they probably have worked at some point, but it's kind of the long-term outcome that we're looking at. The good news is that there's an equally long list, one that I can't even get through all in this hour, of lists that parents can do that can help our children. So give me a smiley face if you recognize yourself in any of these methods. Did you see yourself
Badly.
in any of them? Of course.
Badly. Yes.
Definitely. It's pretty normal to have tried some of these out. So, if there's one thing we want you to go away with, is that there are lots of things parents and children can do to tackle and manage anxiety. As parents, you can encourage your child to open up about worries and fears. You can empathize and listen to your child's concerns, and I saw many of you mention that. What are they worried about? What do they expect is going to happen? Let your children share their fears and talk about what's going on in their mind. There are a variety of strategies on how you can talk to your child about this. You can start by describing a recent situation where you observed some signs of anxiety in your child, or it can sometimes help to share with your child some things that you were scared of when you were the same age, especially if you shared some of the same fears, and ask if they have similar worries or fears. You can also describe situations that make other kids anxious and gently inquire if this happens to your child. And finally, you can try to being direct by simply asking what worries your child the most. Being specific can help your child sort through confusing fears and feelings. And a kind of an example of that one is with my child when he was going to do some public speaking. I asked, was he worried about that? And very proudly he responded and said, well, yes, I am. Of course, I'm about to speak in front of a bunch of people. So he expected that it was going to happen and that it was normal. And so just again, checking in with your child and knowing that it's okay to have those feelings. Support them by saying that you believe your child and that having these feelings is okay. Show acceptance of worry thoughts and anxious feelings. If you stay calm, it will also help your child stay calm. Praise brave and calm behavior. It's important to acknowledge that your child's fears are real, even if you don't share them. Your empathy will increase the chances that your child will accept your guidance and be motivated to work on reducing anxiety. Karen Young put it so well when she said, when we tell them there's nothing to worry about, it doesn't stop them worrying. Instead, it sends a message to the protective amygdala, we called Amy earlier, that the threat just got bigger because the important adult doesn't get it. And I thought that was so powerful. As parents, we can ensure we take care of the basics: sleep, meals, reduce screen time, and exercise. These are huge, and this is not a list. I know this is one we kind of just go over, but it's really huge and can be easily dismissed, but need to be the starting point for everything with our children. Have they got enough sleep? Have they got enough to eat? Have they got their snacks? How much screen time are they spending? And what kind of exercise? So ensuring that you're prioritizing these things and making them happen. Parents can be a guide and a coach. You can learn and share how anxiety works. You can normalize it, and you can support your child in tackling it. Parents can develop the skills for parenting a child with anxiety, which you're doing today, and many of you have probably done previous. There is no one-size-fits-all solution for anxiety. There's a lot of great research-based techniques that can help. Manage it, calming techniques, changing thoughts, facing fears, problem solving, goal setting, just a few. Parents can look at our own beliefs and the ways you might avoid uncomfortable situations, as well as how you might unknowingly be role modeling the wrong behaviors for your child. We can take the Let It Grow challenge. And I thought about this when I was in PEI, and my son, who did not want to get on the roller coaster, I was sitting beside him very happy that he didn't want to get on the roller coaster because neither did I. So in that moment, I was like, okay, we didn't get on the roller coaster, but I did think about it. What am I modeling myself in terms of my fears and what I want to do? Parents can plant the seeds of change in your family and the understanding that challenges can be faced. Parents can role model courage, independence in your child's presence. And parents can forgive yourself for the past mistakes, let go of the guilt, and practice self-compassion. We need to be the strong one, as children can't think straight in the middle of an anxious storm. When you start changing your responses to worry, there may be a lot of resistance, but learning new approaches and skills will pay off in the long run. Your job is to remain consistent and calm. So much easier said than done. In the chat box, let me know if you've tried any of these strategies or which ones you feel the most helpful about. Which of these do you see working, or which ones you'd like to work with?
I just like that reminder, starting with the basics, right? That's for sure within my control. I can make sure they're fed. I can make sure they're hydrated. I can make sure they're sleeping, you know, so I like that. Just start with what I know I can start with and then work on the others.
Absolutely. Limiting screen, yeah, screen time, sleep. Definitely within our. Any questions? Because there was a lot in those two slides that I went over. Are there any questions or comments as we continue? We would be a guide for yeah.
Just definitely put that in as well. I really like the being a role model, like really looking at ourselves and saying, am I modeling the behavior I want to see in my kids? And if not, then I need to change that. And then Brenda said, helping kids to see that food, sleep are necessary before they can be successful in tests or in sports. And Natalie, staying calm.
Because for our busy kids, stopping to do those things is not their favorite thing to do. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Okay. So we're going to hit a few more strategies as our time's going. So as we mentioned earlier, checking in with children and encouraging children to open up about worries and fears is really key. And so one tool that families can use to assist them is the stress stoplight. So this tool provides a visual cue for children in determining how stressed they are, which can then lead to more discussion about the why. Some children are really great at telling you exactly how they're feeling and why, and other children express themselves differently. So a visual cue that they can refer to can be really helpful. So this tool helps support communication, provides a simple way for children to describe how they're feeling and talk about what they need and make positive choices. Can you give me a green check if you're familiar with the mental health continuum from the road to mental readiness? Has anybody heard of them? Okay, so a few of you are familiar with. Okay. So the stoplight is another way of introducing this concept to children. The mental health continuum visual helps adults to check in with themselves. Parents can use the stress stoplight with their children in similar ways. This tool can be used with children as young as 3 years old. The whole family can use similar language to describe how they're feeling. I'm feeling green today, things are going well, or I'm feeling red today, I need to change something to feel better. Some families have made pictures of the stoplight together and put it on the fridge or on a door frame so children can point to it or indicate how they're feeling. Sometimes it's put on as a door hanger, and the door might be shut at that time, but it helps to understand what's going on or why they needed to have some time by themselves, if that's what's helpful or can help them to regulate. Similar to the mental health continuum, the red zone is when children are under too much stress and are feeling upset or overwhelmed. The yellow is when children are ready to make a change, so they move to the green and feel better. And the green means go. Children are happy, playing better, thinking clearer, and are more comfortable. We all want to help our children to get to the green. And remember, the goal is not stress-free, but stressing better. And learning strategies that help you move toward the green are part of this. So some children are really open about their feelings, while others hold them much closer. So encouraging all families to adopt kind of similar language and the visual can be really helpful. So the mental health continuum, for those of you that are not familiar, that's on the bottom of the screen, is also shared with military members throughout their career as well. So it would be great if the whole family can use some language that's similar. As we discussed earlier, and many of you mentioned in some of the chat, teaching our children about the brain and the physical reactions we experience with anxiety is important, so is the ability to manage those reactions. Knowing how the alarm system fires off and takes away the mystery, Knowing how to step back and breathe a bit allows the child to shift out of the danger mindset. Breathing is the part of the plan designed to give you and your child an opportunity to pause, reboot, and get back on track. The mind and body are interconnected, so when the body's relaxed, the mind can slow down. When the mind is calm, the body can relax. You can't be tense and relaxed at the same time. Adults can teach children how the mind and body are connected by providing opportunities for breathing exercises, movement, stretching, and action. Learning ways to relax helps children to feel better, less tense or upset, and more confident in themselves. As children learn to identify their own stressors and when they are in the red, they are better able to use tools like moving their body to help them become calm. It isn't always easy to relax, but it's an important life skill. What are some of the things that you've tried to manage these physical symptoms of stress or anxiety? So I saw breathing was something that people mentioned. Is there anything else you would add to the list of things that you've tried to help manage the physical symptoms of anxiety? Do we have anybody with active children that are in sports or those types of activities, exercising, going for walks? Absolutely. My son and I will do some mindfulness apps that we have, and those can be really helpful at bedtime to be able to help with the mind and everything that's going on. Drawing is an excellent, yes, creativity and drawing can really help with some of those physical symptoms. Listening to calm music can be really helpful, absolutely. Singing and dancing, those are great ones. Again, helping children to understand how they can use those things to help their body to get more calm. Great ideas. And we're going to share some more strategies after the session, as well as some apps that you might be interested in using. There are a lot of resources around breathing and mindfulness strategies for children. It's also important to note that relaxing by itself is not the answer. Addressing only the symptoms without addressing the thought patterns and beliefs that fire off those body reactions is like putting a bucket under the drip of a leaky ceiling without ever climbing up to repair the leaky roof. So lucky for us, there are a lot more ways of repairing the leaky roof. You have something to say, Joanna? I wasn't sure I heard you.
I just typed it in. I was just saying all those mindfulness activities that everyone was mentioning that their kids do, you can do them with them. And that's what so it's sort of a cool thing. You can support them doing it. You can dance. You can listen to calming music. You can color with them. And it's good for you, and it shows that you think that they're valuable tools as well because you're doing them with them.
Absolutely. And the reality is at the end of the night, I might not do mindfulness by myself, but when I'm doing it with my son, I am participating in that. So it can be beneficial for all of those involved. Absolutely. Another strategy to look at is some of our patterns and beliefs and how we look at anxiety. So the first one is expect to worry. It's normal, it's common, and it can be helpful. So everybody worries and everybody is supposed to worry. Try to stop acting startled by each new occurrence of worry and help your child do the same. Such thoughts and feelings are a normal part of the process and giving yourself permission to move forward. We don't have to interpret such feelings as a signal to stop. The times when kids might worry, trying something new, unsure about plans, lots of what-if questions, performance situations, something scary is actually happening. So try to start noticing every time your mind goes into worry. You don't have to believe everything that your mind is telling you. Though we expect anxiety to be part of our life, we do not accept that anxiety must permanently rule your family and your child. Personify the worry as an object outside of yourself is another approach to managing anxiety. Attribute purpose and motivation to it. Perceive yourself as in a relationship with your anxieties. Learn to hear and talk to your worries so that you can demystify the scary physical response and reactivate the logical brain. So let's hear a little bit of how that might sound. So is there someone that might be willing, a couple of volunteers who might be willing to read one of those columns? So can someone read expect it? What does it sound like when you're expecting worry and talking to it? Do we have any brave volunteers?
Tammy raised her hand. Tammy?
Excellent. You can read the first column. Yeah, expect it.
I know you're just trying to help. You usually show up at these times, so I'm not surprised by you. Worry is a part of learning, something new. I'm supposed to feel this way.
Excellent. And if I'm taking care of it, it sounds like I'm going to feel nervous and then it'll be over. It's okay, things will work out. It's okay, I can handle whatever happens. I'm safe even though I feel scared. Joanna, do you want to boss it around?
I love bossing things around. All right, I'll get back to you on that worry. You're not helping, I'm going to ignore you. I know you're there, but I'm busy. Knock it off, stop trying to scare me. You're ruining my fun. I've had it with you. I think I've said that to people before.
It could be the people around us, or sometimes it's the voices that we can hear, absolutely. And this can be really powerful for children, and some children take to this really well. Again, you need to figure out who your child is and what might work. This helps with adults too. Someone mentioned self-talk, so you can really think about this in terms of self-talk a little bit too, but it's that recognition that that worry is not necessarily you, and that you can tell it what to do, and it can be really powerful for children. Your child needs to take charge, and he can start by learning how to talk to worry. Your child must find his own voice, and you must use yours less. You can even use characters from stories, movies, or even people you might know to inspire a name for your child's anxiety. Encourage your child to choose a name and a character that they can identify with that can be defeated. So probably not Superman is not going to be the name of your worry, but once the anxiety has a name and identity, encourage your child and the whole family to start using it. So I can't believe Meanie scared you into missing that sleepover. What a bully. It looks like baloney has really bossed you around about today, and now it's telling me what to do. So it's just a different idea of how you can really externalize that piece and help them to understand that is separate. In the chat box, what might you name your worry or anxiety? Maybe you already have a name for it. Venom. Any others? Have you ever thought about it in terms of naming it as a character?
I think if you have a child who tends to be more like into drama, right? Dramatic things and acting and more creative in that sense, that this would be an amazing tool, like putting a name to it for them or having them pick a name.
So it's something to think about, absolutely, Allison, that you can explore with your child and to think about a way of kind of naming it. It's a way of being able to, again, to identify it, to understand that you might, when you might see it. So you're trying something new, so you might expect that that Meanie voice might kind of show up, and so you kind of know it's coming, you're getting ready for it, you're going to take care of it, and you're going to boss it around. So it's something to kind of think about how you might be able to use that. And this comes from Lynn Lyons. And so she spent some time talking about that in her book, and so it really is a really useful tool, and she's shown videos with when she works with children about it, and it's quite powerful. So as we end today's session, I did think, since it is that time of year, it might be useful to do a little bit around school anxiety. So give me a green check if you're excited about the fact that September and school is coming. And who of you can live without the excitement? Give me a green check for you're excited and an X for you could live without it. Okay, we've got some green checks. People are excited. Excellent. So Anxiety BC has a great one-pager that will be included in the after-session email that goes over some of these, but I thought it would be good to kind of use it as a review of some of the things that we talked about today. And it could also provide you with an opportunity to try some new strategies as the new school year starts with your children and your family. So as we discussed, anxious feelings are normal and expected during times of transition or change. This is especially true for children and teens going back to school or for first-timers starting school. So don't be surprised if your child is anxious. It's normal, and it's also okay if they aren't, of course. Some common worries include, who will be my new teacher? What if my new teacher is mean? Will any of my friends be in my class? What if I miss the bus? The list can go on and on. So some suggested ways to deal with back-to-school worries can include looking after the basics. So we talked about this before, and I keep repeating, but it's making sure that people are getting enough sleep, that they're getting the food they need. Anxious children sometimes forget to eat. Busy people sometimes forget to eat. Anxious people might not feel hungry, but it's still really important to get that food and to get the sleep. Routines are something you're looking at this time of year and trying to make life a little bit more predictable as you come into the September season. Encouraging children to share their feelings, asking them how they're feeling about school coming up, and normalizing those concerns, checking in. Avoid giving too much reassurance and instead kind of looking at problem-solving methods and planning. So children often seek reassurance that bad things won't happen in order to reduce their worry. So instead of saying, don't worry, everything's going to be fine, encourage their children to think of ways to solve their problem. So Lynn Lyons has a great little video on her Facebook page that talks about creating a list before school, and you divide the piece of paper into two, and one side has what I don't know, and the other side has what I know, and brainstorming with your children with the goal of filling the what I don't know to be much longer than what I know, and talking about all of the things in a kind of exciting, curious way, and making sure that you take a look, and they can take that sheet with them even to school, and some of the things that they don't know are going to move to the no category. So having fun with it. So what they may know is their teacher's name, what they might not know is who they're going to sit beside. And you can go through that list in a way to help the kids to kind of have some curiosity too about it, instead of being uncertain being a bad thing, actually being a curious thing and something that they're going to be able to find out when they get to school. So you can check out our Facebook page to see the little clip. So anxiety demands certainty, but we just can't know everything, and life is full of mights and maybes. So I'm really scared that someone's going to throw up the first day of school. Well, someone might throw up the first day of school. It's not going to be pleasant, but you're probably going to be able to get through it. So it's helping children to be okay and play around in that place of uncertainty. Other ideas on engaging your children in problem-solving planning instead of giving reassurance could be role-playing with your child. So sometimes role-playing a certain situation with your child can help them make a plan and feel more confident about a situation. Try to focus on some of the positive aspects. Encourage your child to redirect attention away from all of the worries and towards some of the positives. Ask your child, what are 3 things that you're most excited about in your first day of school? Most kids can think of something good, even if it's just eating a special snack or they get to go home at the end of the day. Chances are that the fun aspects are simply getting overlooked by repetitive worries. Pay attention to your own behaviors. It can be anxiety-provoking for parents to hand over care and responsibility of their child to teachers. Children take cues from us, so they're more confidence and comfort you can model, the more your child will understand there's no reason to be afraid. Be supportive yet firm, and when saying goodbye in the morning, say it cheerfully once as they leave. Other things you might want to consider at least 1 week before is the routine starting up, the waking up, eating, going to bed at regular times, older children trying out that alarm clock, having them be responsible for getting up, practice using it, get some help with those school lunches, get them engaged in what they're putting in their lunch so they might actually eat it, create a list of school supplies together, so those are some things, and then to teach and practice those strategies and skills you've been using around when they feel nervous, such as calm breaths and exercise. A couple days before school, you might be practicing the walk to school, taking the bus, if you have the opportunity to take a tour of the school. One of the schools in our area is actually having their meet the teacher the night before school starts, which I thought was really interesting. So they're actually doing it not after school starts, but before. So just an opportunity to get a little bit familiar with the school. And then giving them choices as much as possible, what they want to wear, what they want to take, those types of things, getting the school bag ready. So for younger children who are nervous about separating, suggest taking a special object to school that reminds them of home, so a small something that they can take. A reassuring note in a child's lunch can also help ease sometimes the anxiety. Finding a friend that they might be able to go to, and sometimes, depending on your child, giving the teacher a heads up might be helpful. They have a lot of experience with this and can be very helpful. And most importantly, to praise and reward your child's brave behavior. I've talked a lot about what parents can do, and to sum it all up, I really want parents to feel the hope that this quote speaks to. Our anxiety can become their anxiety, but our resilience can be their resilience. So I just wanted to mention a few resources. Again, they'll be in your package. Mental health practitioners through your medical insurance can also be very helpful sometimes if you want to journey with someone through some of the strategy building with your family. The Canadian Forces Members Assistance Program. Depending on where you're located, you can talk to your MFRC about the Strongest Families Institute, and they work with families through a phone with the child and with the parent, your local MFRC or the family information line. And there's a few visuals there, but there'll be a lot more in the after session email on the resources that are available that you can take a look at. Okay, so that hour zipped by. It was meant to be an introduction. It goes super fast. So as we finish today's session, if you have a comment or a question about today's session, just let me know. You can put it in the chat box or you can raise your hand if you'd like to share.
Yeah, so feel free at this time to, if you don't have any questions, you can just close out the session and you will be receiving the after session email from me sometime probably tomorrow. But if you do have questions, go ahead and unmute yourself and feel free to raise your hand and you can talk. Natalie did put, this was super helpful and informative, great tools, and I look forward to digging more into the resources. So great, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now in case there's more questions.